Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Fayyaz Destara from class 2023B with my student number student ID 23050866063. So here I'm going to present the phonological learning difficulties, a study of EFL students at an Indonesian university focus and insightful titles based on the article that we have read. So, for introduction, learning the sound system of English is a fundamental yet often challenging part of becoming proficient speaker. However, many EFL students find this particularly difficult. They often struggle with English or sounds that do not exist in their native language. For example, sounds like the th in think can be hard to pronounce. This problem is clearly seen among students at the English department of many universities. Many find the phonology and phonetics course to be one of their most difficult subjects. A major obstacle is learning the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA. This material aims to identify the main difficulties these students face. It will explore the types of challenges, their underlying causes, and suggest practical strategies for improvement. So the phonetics, the science of speech sounds. Phonetics is the scientific study of the physical properties of speech sounds. It is concerned with the concrete, measurable details of how we produce and hear sounds. We can break phonetics down into three main areas. The first one is articulatory phonetics. This is the most relevant area for language learners. It focuses on how we use our vocal organs like tongue, lips, teeth, and vocal cords to physically form sounds. For example, it explained that the difference between p and a b is that b uses the vocal cords. It is voice, while p does not. It is voiceless. The second area is acoustic phonetics. This area studies the sound waves we produce. It analyzes properties like pitch, loudness, and quality. This helps explain why the vowel sound in bit sounds different from the one in beat, even if they are both made with a similar mouth shape. And then the third one is auditory phonetics. This is the study of how the ear and brain receive and interpret these sound waves. And then the next, phonology, the sound system of a language. If phonetics is about building blocks, phonology is about the architecture. It deals with the abstract mental system of sounds in a particular language. Phonology is concerned with how sounds function to create meaning. The most important concept here is the phoneme. A phoneme is the smallest unit of sound that can change the meaning of a word. For instance, in English, p and b are separate phonemes because swapping them creates different words, pat and bad. Sounds that are different phonemes in one language might be considered the same sound in another. Phonology also study about allophones. So these are variation of a single phoneme that do not change meaning. And then syllable structure and stress. Phonology examines how sounds can be combined into syllables and which syllables in a word are stressed. English is a stress time language, meaning that stressed syllables occur at roughly regular intervals, and unstressed syllables are often shortened, like the word banana is stressed as banana. Well, we move on to the crucial intersection of EFL learners. For success in communication, EFL learners must master both phonetics and phonology. Phonetics provides the how-to. It gives learner the tools to physically produce the challenging sounds of English. Phonology provides the rules. It helps learners understand which sounds are important for meaning and how they fit together in the flow of speech. A student might be able to physically produce the I and I sounds, a phonetic skill. But if they do not understand that these sounds distinguish words like ship and sheep, this is a phonological rule, they will likely cause misunderstandings. Therefore, difficulties in one area will inevitably affect the other, making both essential for overcoming pronunciation and listening challenges. And then we move on to the phonetics, science of speech sound. This is the major area of phonological difficulties. The difficulties faced by EFL learners can be categorized into several key areas, moving from individual sounds to the broader patterns of speech. And the first area is segmental difficulties. This is the individual sound. So this area deals with the production and perception of specific consonant and vowels. The first is problematic consonants. So this is sounds that are not in their native language. Students struggle with English consonants that do not exist in their native language or L1 phonological system. You can see the example over there. Ink, think, to think, very versus very, pet versus pet. And then there's problematic vowels. Cannot distinguish vowel length and quality. So English has a large and complex vowel system, which is a major source of difficulty. The primary challenge lies in distinguishing vowels based on length and quality, a contrast often absent in the learners. There's an example over there, ship and sheep. And then there's phoneme confusion, results in misunderstood minimal pairs. So this is the practical consequences of the problems above. When learners cannot perceive or produce the contrast between two phonemes, they confuse words that form minimal pairs. Like for example, she, see, ship, sheep, pet, bat. And then the another areas is phonetics transcription. The difficulty learning abstract IPA symbols, and then the consequences cannot visualize or accurately produce sounds. And then we move on to the suprasegmental difficulties or prosody. Stress parents. This area concern the features of speech that extend beyond individual sounds, such as stress, rhythm, and intonation. And there are key areas for suprasegmental difficulties. And the first one is stress parents. Students have difficulty with the placement of stress within words and sentences. Incorrect stress can change the meaning of a word or make speech sound unnatural and hard to understand. The example is like record versus record. And then the second key areas of suprasegmental difficulties is rhythm. So, rhythm, this is a fundamental challenge. English is a stress time language, meaning stress syllables occur at roughly regular intervals, with unstressed syllables compressed between them. In contrast, Indonesian is a syllable time language where each syllable receives relatively equal stress. And then for consequences is the result is like flat, is a monotonous, unnatural speech. And then the intonation. So intonation or the rise and fall of pitch is crucial for conveying meaning, emotion, and grammatical structure. For example, like distinguishing a question from a statement. So the consequences, learners misunderstand intonation patterns, which leads to difficulties in conveying the correct emotional tone or question statement distinction. And then there is a phonological process in connected speech. So in the issue is sound change in fast, natural conversation. Learners only know the dictionary from words, and the specific processes is assimilation from good boy to good boy, and then elision, emitting sounds. Vowel reduction, unstressed vowel become uh. So in natural fast speech sounds undergo changes that are systematic and rule govern. Learners who are only familiar with the citation form of words or how they are said in isolation and connected speech bewildering. And the reason for difficulty or the result, it states that these processes are often implicit and without clear instruction or contextualized examples. Students may fail to recognize them in spontaneous speech. This causes significant problems in listening comprehension. Then we move on to the underlying factors contributing to the difficulties. So the first is the linguistic factors, and then the sub factor for this is L1 interference, mother tongue influence. So the this is the effect of a student's native language, like for this case Indonesian, on their learning or English sounds. Every language has its own set of sounds or phonemes and rules for how those sounds can be combined. Students naturally apply these pre-existing rules to English, which leads to errors because the sound system are different. So, like for example, is the missing sound in English for think, and this often replaced with t, the, or s, and then the vowel length is hard to hear or say difference in ship versus sheep, and then the rhythm and stress. English is a stress time language, while Indonesian is syllable time language. So speech sounds unnatural. And then the second sub factor for linguistic factor is spelling pronunciation inconsistency. So English spelling is notoriously irregular, does not match pronunciation, and often so this force learners to memorize pronunciation individually rather than relying on rules, creating a significant cognitive load. For example, is L in calm, K in knife. Learners try to pronounce them calm. Like in calm, the L is silent, and for the knife, K is silent. And then there's irregular vowels like of and thought, through, cuff. These three words maybe have the same middle of, but it pronounced very differently, like thought, through, and cuff. And then the second factors are cognitive factors. The first factor is phonological working memory. So the brain's workspace for processing sounds are very limited. It is limited phonological working. It's student often hard to keep new sounds or rules in mind because uh, they speak uh, because they new to the new language like Indonesian speaker to English. So student may know h versus b theory but cannot apply it in real conversation. And then the processing limitations. Speaking requires managing ideas, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation at once. Heavy cognitive load lead to students focus on meaning, not sound accuracy. The student can identify pat and bad in tests, but mispronounce them in real speech. And then the third factor is instructional and environmental factors. So many EFL classes prioritize grammar, vocabulary, and reading comprehension over explicit and sustained pronunciation teaching. Features like intonation stress and rhythm are often ignored. So where practice, students' speech sounds flat or has wrong stress patterns. And then limited exposure. So students primarily encounter textbook English in the classroom, which is often slow, clear, and standardized. They lack sufficient contact with the messy reality of authentic speech, which includes fast paced, connected speech processes, assimilation, elision, and a variety of native and non native accents. For example, is like limited exposure to authentic speech and diverse accents as a major hurdle. Students find it difficult to comprehend spoken English due to various factors such as speed, accent variation, and background noise. This lack of exposure means they are unprepared for real world listening situations. And then the fourth factors is psychological factors. The first is pronunciation anxiety. So this is the fear and nervousness associated with speaking a Varian language. Specifically, the worry about mispronouncing words and being judged negatively by others. For example, is the paper that we read is links to psychological barriers like pronunciation anxiety. Bar- uh, barrier. So this anxiety can cause two problems: avoidance. Student avoids speaking to prevent mistakes, and then overcorrection, focus too much on perfection. So speech here sounds very stiff. I'm sorry for the title for the second. It's supposed to be lack of confidence, not limited exposure. So, uh, this is the direct results of repeated difficulties, anxiety, and a perceived inability to master pronunciation. Low confidence creates a vicious cycle. Students don't practice because they lack confidence, and because they don't practice, and because they uh, do not improve, which further erodes their confidence. So the article we read that it concludes that building student confidence is essential for overcoming difficulties. This lacks of this lack of confidence reduces willingness to participate in activities that develop phonological skills. When students feel they are not good at pronunciation, they withdraw from the very activities that would help them to improve. So here are the six strategies for overcoming difficulties. The first one is the first one is explicit phonetic instruction, and then do a minimal pair drills, and then do suprasegmental feature training, and then do a phonological awareness activities, and then using the technology and simulation in real world. And the last one is supportive learning environment. So the learning environment has to be supportive, like a teacher helping a student when the student is hard at pronouncing something. So for the conclusion, so EFL students' phonological difficulties are multifaceted, stemming from a complex interplay of linguistic, cognitive, instructional, and psychological factors. That's all from me. I'm sorry for making a mistake. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.